Have you ever wondered, what am I lacking to get what I want? What are the tools I need in order to reach success? First, what do I mean when I say tools? Tools are our main ways of interacting with the situation. And generally, we need 5 kinds of tools. To define these tools, we are going to utilize the Big Five, also known as 5-factor model. Big Five is a trait-based psychological model that assesses people based on 5 factors. These are openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, also known as ocean. Openness to experience is your ability to adapt to new situations. Conscientiousness, on the other hand, is your ability to be diligent and careful. Extraversion is your ability to interact with the outside factors. Agreeableness is your ability to cooperate and find harmony. And finally, neuroticism is your sensitivity to stress. These traits are considered to be the 5 traits a Western culture values, aside from the neuroticism trait, but we will get there. There are many arguments that the opposite ends of these traits are also considered valuable. But, in my opinion, that's not true in Big Five. Not being open to new experiences or being hard to work with is not a valuable trait in many cultures. Also, because it's a trait-based system, you can improve yourself in all of these traits. Because culture values are a comparative thing, increasing your status in your culture is a competition. All of these traits define your ability to utilize 5 kinds of tools that are valuable in any competition. Your openness to new experiences will help you utilize tools that gives you new kind of things. These tools gives you a competitive advantage that is unique to yourself. Your conscientiousness will help you utilize tools that gives you the things you need in your game. These tools gives you a win condition, which will push you to the finish line. Your extraversion will help you utilize tools that gives you ways to affect the situation. These tools gives you a way to have agency on the situation. Otherwise, you will be at your opponent's mercy. Your agreeableness will help you utilize tools that can create harmony between other factors. These tools unite your systems and make sure that they can work in full efficiency. Unlike other traits, your neuroticism trait usually considered a negative one. But your neuroticism trait will help you be aware of dangers much more easily, which will make you better at tools that helps you prevent, mitigate, or avoid these dangers. These tools help you to protect your systems. So, let's count the tools you need. First, a tool to give you a competitive advantage. Secondly, a tool for winning the game. Then, have a tool for affecting the game's outcome. Also, have a tool for gaining resources to utilize. And finally, have a tool for protecting yourself from negative influences. But, how do we know which tools belong to which category? That's where Neo-PIR comes in. According to Neo-PIR, each trait has 6 different facets that defines them. These facets can be used to correctly categorize the tools we have. First, let's look at the facets of openness to experiences. Facets of openness to experiences are fantasy, aesthetics, feelings, actions, ideas, and values. People who are high in fantasy facet sees the world in a different way. That's why they want tools that can shape the world. So, in my world, there was a spell called Zero Gravity. Zero Gravity considered a fantasy tool because it changed the rules of how gravity works. So, if a tool can alter the rules of the situation, that tool has fantasy potential. People who are high in aesthetics facet, on the other hand, can see the hidden connections between things. That's why they want tools that can unlock the hidden potentials of the situation. By lowering the temperature with heat manipulation spell, we made our magnet guns more powerful. Because magnetism increases in lower temperatures. That's why heat manipulation considered an aesthetics tool. So, if a tool can unlock these potentials, that tool has aesthetics potential. Some people are high in feelings facet, which gives them the ability to understand what other people needs. That's why they want tools that can utilize other people's needs. Casting a rain spell will hinder fire users, while empowering cold users. Rain spell considered a feelings tool. So, if a tool can affect other people's needs, that tool has feelings potential. If a person is great in using different kinds of actions, that person is high in action facet. That's why they want tools that gives them different types of actions. For example, our jetpacks allows us to reach higher grounds we otherwise cannot. Jetpacks are an actions tool. So, if a tool gives you different kinds of actions, that tool has actions potential. People who are high in ideas are kind of a similar breed. Unlike actions facet, people who are high in ideas facet can see different ways of doing things instead of doing different things. That's why they prefer tools that gives them alternative ways of doing things. You can prefer incinerating bullets or shocking bullets for different kinds of enemies. These different types of bullets are an ideas tool. So, if a tool gives you alternative ways of doing things, that tool has ideas potential. People who are high in values, on the other hand, sees different uses for their resources. That's why they prefer tools that gives them alternative uses for the resources they have. A hydrogun, for example, can turn water into ammunition, thus giving your drinking or cleaning water an alternative usage. That's why hydrogun is an values tool. So, if a tool creates alternative usage for your resources, that tool has values potential. Now, let's go into our next facets, which are conscientiousness facets. Facets of conscientiousness are competence, order, dutifulness, achievement striving, self-discipline, and deliberation. A person who is high in competence can complete the task at their hands. That's why they prefer tools that can close the game once they are used. Rocket launchers are a lethal tool if you can hit your target. That's why rocket launchers are a great example of a competence tool. So, if a tool can give you a great amount of progress, that tool has competence potential. People who are high in order are great at creating a working system. That's why they prefer tools that can work within that system. For example, a resonator gun can fire itself whenever you chant a spell. Because of that, a resonator gun can be a great order tool, as long as you can chant spells continuously. So, if a tool can get you progress while you are doing other things, that tool has order potential. If a person is high in dutifulness, that person will do its job no matter what. That's why they prefer tools that are hard to stop. A tank is an almost unstoppable weapon, which makes it a great dutifulness tool. So, if a tool gives you an unstoppable progress, that tool has dutifulness potential. Some people prefer to establish a position where they'll progress even if they don't do anything. Those people are high in achievement striving. That's why they prefer tools that can take over the game on their own. Summoning spells creates new threats that can work on their own. And those summoning spells are an excellent example of an achievement-striving tool. If a tool gives you an extra threat that can progress on their own, that tool has achievement-striving potential. People who are high in self-discipline are brilliant optimizers. They don't waste any form of resources. That's why they prefer tools that either requires no resources or can work on leftovers. Bayonets we put on our rifles are a great example of this. They will not only allow us to use our rifles as spears without wasting ammunition, but also requires little to no resources at all. That makes bayonets a self-discipline tool. So, if a tool makes you progress efficiently, that tool has self-discipline potential. Some people, on the other hand, prefers to play for the longer game. Those people are high in deliberation. People who are high in deliberation prefers tools that gets better and better as the game goes on. Viper's Kiss is a poison that gets stronger with every heartbeat. More you move, more your heart beats faster. Viper's Kiss is a vile form of deliberation tool. So, if a tool becomes a threat as the game goes longer, that tool has deliberation potential. This brings us to our third group of facets, which are extraversion facets. Extraversion facets are warmth, gregariousness, assertiveness, activity, excitement seeking, and positive emotions. Let's start with warmth. People who are high in warmth are great at interacting with their allies. Those people prefer tools that lets them prepare a good setup for their allies. Grabbing an enemy in a fight will help your allies do their action much more easily. That makes grabbing a warmth tool. So, if a tool makes it easier for your allies to act, that tool has warmth potential. Some people are like to take the matters into their own hands. Those people are high in gregariousness. They prefer tools that allows them to start action. Flashbangs can be used to distract and create an opening for an attack. That makes flashbangs a form of gregariousness tool. So, if a tool can use to create an opening to start your action, that tool has gregariousness potential. People who are high in assertiveness, on the other hand, wants to be able to dictate the flow of the game. They want tools that stop the momentum of their enemies. Using a spell that blocks the enemy's path, like the Force Wall spell, can be used to stop their momentum. That turns Force Wall into an assertiveness tool. So, if a tool can be used to prevent your opponent from getting what they want, that tool has assertiveness potential. Some people want to be able to constantly involved in every action. They are high in activity. People who are high in activity prefer tools that keeps them going. Blade dancers are great at having a sense of rhythm. They can connect all of their moves to each other, so they can act continuously. That makes the sense of rhythm a great tool for activity. So, if a tool can connect your current action to your next one, that tool has activity potential. Meanwhile, there are some people who wants to go big or go home. Those people are high in excitement seeking. They prefer tools that can create a big impact. A meteor spell can create a huge threat that has to be dealt with. That forces your opponent to deal with it immediately. That makes the meteor spell an excitement-seeking tool. So, if a tool can create a big impact that demands attention, that tool has excitement-seeking potential. Finally, we have people who are high in positive emotions. People who are high in positive emotions can do their actions regardless of the situation. So, they prefer tools that can deal with obstacles on their path. Blink spell not only can avoid incoming attacks, but also help you overcome obstacles that blocks your path. That makes Blink spell a positive emotion tool. So, if a tool helps you overcome the negative setbacks, that tool has positive emotion potential. Now, we are reaching the finish line. But before that, we have to cover the agreeableness facets. Agreeableness facets are trust, straightforwardness, altruism, compliance, modesty, and tender-mindedness. Let's start with people who are high in trust. They are good at knowing who to trust and when to trust. So, they prefer tools that improves others' actions, sometimes to cost their own. Frontliners carry big shields that can be used to cover for others, which gives extra room for their allies to do their things. So, if a tool can create space for others, that tool has trust potential. In the meanwhile, some people prefer to be helpful in a straightforward way. Those people are high in straightforwardness. They prefer tools that can provide what their allies can't do. When regular bullets are not enough to break an ice wall, a flamethrower can melt it easily. When it does, flamethrower becomes a straightforwardness tool. So, if a tool allows you to do a thing one of your teammates is supposed to do, that tool has straightforwardness potential. Some people are okay with doing the dirty work so they can win as a unit. That unknown heroes are high in altruism. They prefer tools that benefits the collective instead of themselves. Banners are used to coordinate the large groups of people, but someone has to carry them instead of other tools. That means banners are an altruism tool. So, if a tool beneficial for victory at the cost of personal glory, that tool has altruism potential. People who are high in compliance likes to get along with everyone. They prefer tools that works well with others. Magnet guns shoot magnets that will pull bullets to themselves, which makes it easier for others to connect their shots. That means magnet guns are a brilliant example of a compliance tool. So, if a tool can create a synergy with others, that tool has compliance potential. Some people can work without getting any rewards. Those people are high in modesty. They prefer tools that can be beneficial without requiring anything. An inspiring speech can help boost morale and help people push for that one last step. And it costs nothing. That's why inspiring someone is a modesty tool. So, if a tool helps others without requiring anything, that tool has modesty potential. Let's finish agreeableness with tender-mindedness. People who are high in tender-mindedness are aware of others' needs. That's why they prefer tools that provide resources to others. Mana sharing spells help you share your own mana with others, so they can utilize more resources. That makes mana sharing spells an excellent tender-mindedness tool. Which means if a tool can transfer some of your resources to others, that means that tool has tender-mindedness potential. Now, last but not least, neuroticism facets. Neuroticism is mostly considered a negative trait, but for our purposes, it just defines preferences on tools. Also, having a high neuroticism means that you are much more aware of dangers. It's like having a spider sense in games. Neuroticism facets are anxiety, anger, depression, self-consciousness, impulsiveness, and vulnerability. Let's start with anxiety. People who are high in anxiety are worried about what might happen. So, they want tools that secure their future. Having a protective energy bubble around you will block some of the incoming attacks. In a way, that bubble protects your future, which makes it an anxiety tool. So, if a tool can eliminate negative possibilities, that tool has potential to prevent anxiety. People who get easily irritated are high in anger. They want tools that can eliminate current threats that irritates them. Silence spell prevent enemy casters from chanting spells. That makes silence spell an anger tool. So, if a tool can eliminate existing threats, that tool has potential to prevent anger. People who are high in depression, on the other hand, are stuck with what happened. They want tools that can cleanse the lingering effects of the past. Restoration spells can heal your wounds, cure your sicknesses, or cleanse any negative effects that is left on you. Restoration spells are a perfect example of a depression tool. So, if a tool can eliminate lingering effects that hinders you, that tool has potential to prevent depression. Some people are too obsessed with their own weak points. They are high in self-consciousness. They want tools that can cover those weak points. Some weapons don't work properly when it's raining. So we did implement some upgrades, so they can work in rain as well. Those upgrades are self-consciousness tools. So, if a tool helps you overcome your weaknesses, that tool has potential to prevent self-consciousness. On the opposite end, we have people who are high in impulsiveness. They act on their impulses a lot, which might put them into dangerous positions. So, they want tools that can help them escape those situations. Recall devices can help you teleport to the location that you set it in, which helps you escape in dangerous situations. Meaning, recall devices are an excellent impulsiveness tool. So, if a tool gives you an escape option, that tool can prevent impulsiveness. So, we came to our final facet, which is vulnerability facet. People who are high in vulnerability are very fragile against negative effects. So they tend to give up or fail a lot. That's why they want tools that helps them do their job consistently. Potions can give you extra healing, mana, or makes you resistant to certain effects. Potions are a great example of a vulnerability tool. So, if a tool can prevent negative influences, that tool has potential to prevent vulnerability. Now, every tool can have one or more or even all of these facets. Also, these tools can be used for different purposes in different situations. A flamethrower can be used to finish your enemies or melt an ice wall. What matters is where you are putting those tools in your arsenal. If you don't have an openness to experience tool, you will be left behind. If you don't have a conscientiousness tool, you won't be getting any progress. If you don't have an extraversion tool, you won't have any say in the game. If you don't have an agreeableness tool, you cannot unlock your true potential. If you don't have a neuroticism tool, you will be defenseless against negative influences. So, let's go to the other side. How should we design tools into our systems or games in a fair way? We will divide these games into two categories: PvP games and PvE games. Let's start with PvP games. I'm assuming you watched my Holland Codes and Challenges video. If you don't, I will leave a link in the description below. First, you decide what kind of challenges your players will be facing. After that, you should decide a balancing point where every player starts at. Then, you give your players tools to change that balance. These will be their openness to experience tools, which will give them competitive advantages to skew the balance in their favor. Next, design their path to victory. What do they need to do in order to get to the finish line? Then, create tools that will help your players to gain progress in the race. And these will be their conscientiousness tools. Now, during the race, people need to interact with each other. Otherwise, it won't be a PvP game. So, give them different ways to interact with each other. That way, they can have control over what happens in the game. Oh, and those ways of interactions will be their extraversion tools. Now, some moves will be stronger and some will be weaker. So, if you don't put some limiters on stronger moves, they will dominate the game and the game becomes stale. But what makes it interesting is you should also add tools that will help your players break those limiters. Why would you want to do that? Because it will reinforce the idea that making the right decisions will be rewarded. So, we got our agreeableness tools as well. And finally, you should give your players tools that will help them fight against negative effects, which will be their neuroticism tool. Now, let's focus on PvE games. Much like in PvP games, you should already be aware of what kind of challenges you're going to give to your players. Now, in a design point, you should start by defining the basic abilities of every single actor in the game, including the player. Then, give your players unique abilities that your enemies doesn't have. And that will be your players' openness to experience tool. Then, design the tools that your players will be used to progress through your game. This will be their conscientiousness tool. After that, you have to give your players tools that can be used to overcome different obstacles your challenges will have. There you got your extraversion tool. Much like in PvP games, your players will have strong and weak abilities. In order to prevent your game from becoming stale, you have to put limiters on their strong abilities, which will make using them much more satisfying. And give your players some agreeableness tools to remove those limiters. Finally, you should give them tools to deal with the negative effects you will be throwing at them, which will be their neuroticism tool. Now, for balancing the tools, decide a number of facets that every tool should have. That will be your starting point. After that, start making tools by assigning them different facets. You can also double or triple the effect of a certain facet instead of putting 2 or 3 facets, turning them into much more specialized versions of themselves. You can also choose facets from different traits. For example, you can add 2 extraversion facets and a neuroticism facet, or 1 agreeableness, 1 conscientiousness, and 1 openness to experience facet to create interesting tools. One final advice I can give is giving them negative versions of these facets. So you add more facets to that tool. Instead of putting 3 facets, you can put 4 facets and a negative one to balance it out. Modesty facet means that tool requires less resources than usual. So a negative modesty facet can be an increased resource requirement. Now, before we finish, I wanna talk about one last subject. That is, what if a game or a system demands more than 5 traits? Well, 5-factor model is really good at defining Western civilizations, but in Eastern ones, it misses a little bit. That's where Hexago comes in. Hexago is another trait-based personality type, which adds a 6th trait called honesty, humility. Also changes neuroticism with emotionality. So, even though the 5-factor model is pretty universal, if your system requires tools that don't fit into any category, add or remove the number of tools you need. Same applies to facets as well. But generally speaking, 5-factor model is a good place to start. So let's summarize. We have 5 traits that defines what kind of values that systems or games will demand from us. That means we have to have at least a tool for fulfilling all these demands in order to reach success. Each trait has 6 facets, which helps us categorize tools. We could also reverse engineer these and design the tools that our players need. Also, If we realize a system or game demands a different type of traits or facets, we could just add them. And if they don't demand a trait or facet, we could remove them. But generally speaking, 5-factor model is a great place to start. Hello. If you reached this part of the video, thank you for your support and best of luck on your journey. What do you think? Do you agree with what I told you? Or can you define the tools you are using in your life? What kind of tools do you think we did have in the Resistance Army? And how did we use them? And if you liked this video, I know you are smart enough to like and subscribe. By hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel, you can show me that you want more videos from me. In our next video, we will talk about Ayurvedic doshas and the energies we have as players. And if you want me to dive into another subject, just let me know in the comments below. And finally, thanks for watching.